Hey guys, Russell here. Had a chat with a friend of mine last night who I haven't seen for a couple of weeks, and he's thinking about applying to join the police force in Victoria. Now, it seems there's a bit of misinformation getting around about the recent changes to the application process, so I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. And I encourage you to not take as gospel anyone's information, including mine, unless you're getting that information directly from the Victoria Police recruiting people. Uncle Bob's next door neighbour who knows a guy who used to be a cop is not necessarily reliable information. So a couple of quick things to look at. The first is the entrance exam. Some people believe there's now no longer an entrance exam. Well, that's not the case. There is an entrance exam. However, if you have a degree in certain areas, you might be eligible to skip the exam because of the degree that you have. I'm still confused about how there's some sort of correlation between the two. We've had a couple of applicants now come sort of back to the scene who had previously struggled to get past the exam but have a degree, so now they are eligible to skip the exam. But anyway, you may be exempt, so check with the recruiting people to see whether you are exempt if you do have a degree, and there's obviously a criteria you need to meet. Now, the other thing is that there is a psychological, essentially a questionnaire. It's almost like a survey to help profile your personality. I guess just to put you in a box so that they know what type of personality you might have. It's not really a test as such, it's more a profiling tool. Now, before recent changes, what would happen is you would go to the Victoria Police Academy to do your fitness test. If you passed that fitness test, you would be taken upstairs into the main building, into a classroom where there's a whole heap of computers. Back in the day, they were typewriters, but anyway, that's another story. And you would sit down in front of that computer and you would take this questionnaire. Now, following on from the questionnaire, on a completely separate day, sometimes a month later, you would have a face-to-face interview with the psychologist. And they would talk about some of the things that came up in the questionnaire and other aspects of your work and your family and your history, social settings and so on, all of those things to get to know you, to determine whether you're suitable for policing or not. That's what would happen before the changes occurred. The changes now mean that questionnaire that you would do on the fitness testing day can now be done separate from the fitness test. So you'll receive an email with instructions and you can take the test online at home in your own time so that you don't have to wait until you get to the fitness testing day to complete that part of the process. Now, the terms or the names have changed a little bit. Rather than psychological questionnaire, they now tend to refer to it as a psychometric test. Now, again, I don't like the word test because it's not really a pass or fail. It's more about categorizing the different elements of your personality. Now, some applicants, not many, but some applicants, as a result of doing that psychometric test, will not be required to do a one-on-one psych interview. Some applicants. The majority of applicants will still need to do an interview with the psychologist on a completely separate day. Now, that does not mean that you must have failed some part of the psychometric testing. It simply means there are things that they need to explore a little deeper that they can't do based on the information provided in the psychometric testing alone. And so it's not a fail if you need to do a psych interview. In fact, it's an opportunity to get to actually speak to someone, to give them the opportunity to get to really know you and understand you as an applicant and as a person. So look, it'd be nice to skip that stage and not have to do an interview, but the majority of applicants will have to, so just jump through the hoop like you do every other hoop that's presented in front of you. Now, just the last thing on the psychological interview before I shut up, and that is that if you have previously been unsuccessful at the psychological interview stage in another application, whether that be a year ago, 2 years ago, or whenever, you will have to do the psychological interview. Okay, so an unsuccessful application due to the psychological interview means that any future application you will do a psychological interview, regardless of what happens in the psychometric testing. Okay, again, so it doesn't mean you failed, just means they'll need to talk to you to dig a little deeper into some of the topics and issues that may have come up in the previous psychological interview in your other application and or in the more recent psychometric testing that you would have conducted prior to going off to the psychological interview. All right, well, I hope that's not too confusing. There is an exam, you might be exempt, There's now a psychometric testing that you can take at home online without having to go to the police academy. And most applicants will still need to do a psychological interview. If for whatever reason you're lucky enough that you don't, you might skip the psychological interview unless you previously have not passed that psychological interview in a previous application. So I hope that all makes sense. As always, if you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to try to answer them for you, but always check with the recruiting people to make sure the information you have is accurate and correct. All right, guys, talk to you again soon. Take care. Cheers. Bye.